All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Proper Animal Protocol Training for Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Yay! What is the reason for this training? Why are we doing it? Well, we want to make sure everybody is safe. That's the bottom line. We want to make sure that you're safe, and we want to make sure that the animals are safe. I just want to make a quick note, too, that this does not replace the official policy that the people who work with animals, the animal care staff, the animal care volunteers themselves, have a more comprehensive training policy. So this does not replace this. This training is just for everybody that works in the building, volunteers, interns, anybody who's even outside of animal care. That's for our safety and for the animals. So what I want you to do right now, take a minute and think of three adjectives, any three adjectives to describe our dolphins. I'll give you a second. There, look at, there's Nicholas right there, and he's catching a football. That's pretty cool. So what'd you come up with? Intelligent? Sure, they seem smart. They're certainly very graceful. That's a good one. You might have come up with beautiful. I think they're beautiful. They are funny, and they are cute. But how many of you came up with this adjective? Wild. I'm willing to bet not many. And really, it's really important to remember that they are all wild animals. They are not pets. So who are we here at Clearwater Marine Aquarium? We're a working marine animal hospital. I don't have to tell you that. Because of that, our number one priority is the health and the safety of everybody, everything. That is our number one priority. We're a hospital, okay? I think it's safe to say that everybody that works here loves animals. That's one of the reasons we work here. And because of that, we could be an integral part of some extremely important work. We're preserving and restoring our marine environment. I guess one of the perks of working here is getting to be so close to all these amazing animals on a daily basis. It's like they become part of our family. But we have to remember that all the animals here are rescued wild animals. They are not pets. Look at the look on that guy's face. Rawr. Yeah, so they're not pets, and we just have to be mindful at all times of our behavior around the animals. You don't want to interfere with the animals' training regimen. It's possible that we can do that even, by accident. So we want to be careful not to do that and following these protocols. Before we get into that, let's talk about animal training. We hear all kinds of terms that are used throughout the aquarium by the trainers and the training staff. So let's define some of these terms. What are they talking about? All right, let's talk about training. What is training exactly? What do we mean? Well, it's just the act of teaching an animal a particular skill, a type of behavior, right? I think that makes sense. So what's a behavior? A behavior is the way the animal acts when it responds to a stimulus. So they do a particular hand signal, the animal behaves this way. That's what the behavior is. Just a quick note, guys, at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, we train and reinforce behaviors. We don't teach the animals tricks, right? So we just kind of avoid that terminology. Different kinds of reinforcement. We always use positive reinforcement when we work with our animals, okay? And that's just following whatever action with something that the subject wants, right? So a positive reinforcement might be fish. The dolphin does something we want them to do, and we give them the fish. The otter does something we want them to do, and we'll give them a meatball or something like that. So that's positive reinforcement. Different types. There's primary reinforcement, and lots of fancy stuff up there. Reinforcing event doesn't depend on previous learning experience. Bottom line is like fish. Fish for the dolphins is a primary reinforcer. So what's a secondary reinforcer? That's an object or an event that might mean nothing initially but becomes reinforcing when we pair it with a primary reinforcer. So like a rub down or a toy would be a secondary reinforcement. Okay. Now, we don't call them toys, though, do we? We call them EEDs. That's a fancy training psychology term. It's environmental enrichment device. Basically, it's a toy for the animal. Bubbles for hope, etc. So those are EEDs. All right, what's some other training definitions here that we've heard? Husbandry, we hear that all the time at the aquarium. And that basically refers to the medical management behaviors. Now, in general psychology or general science, husbandry is the care and cultivation of crops and animals of any kind. But for us here, it's medical management. So, for example, we want to get Panama lying very still on her back while we're holding the tail fluke so that the trainers can draw blood. That's a husbandry behavior. So what is an SD? You might have heard the trainers talk about SDs. SD is a discriminative stimulus. It's basically the hand signals used to train the animals. We'll talk about the hand signals later on, but it's real important that we leave the hand signals to the trainers. I know it's tempting. You see them do them and you want to do it too, so you get a reaction out of any of the dolphins or the otters, but don't do them. Let's leave that for the trainers. We don't want to confuse or impede any of the training process. A bridge, for our purposes, it bridges the time between when the animal exhibits its behavior that we want it to exhibit and the time between then and when it gets its reinforcement, its fish. So, for example, the trainer's whistle is used as a bridge. If Winter's on the other side of the pool after completing a task or a behavior that the trainer wants her to complete, there might be a time lag between when she finishes that behavior and when she actually gets her fish, her reinforcement. And so to let her know she did a good job right away, the trainer blows that whistle, and that's called a bridge. Okay, so from the terms, we went through just some of them, and you can see that it's a lot more complicated process than we might originally have thought, right? Training is more than just sitting in a pool here and throwing fish at a dolphin. It takes a lot of steps, and it's very complicated. So that's why it's really important that we don't do anything that could interfere with it. Now, you might say to yourself, Self, the guests do it all the time, and that's true. The guests get to do it. Look at all these guests out here watching this great leap out of the water here, and the guests do it, but that's under controlled circumstances, and they're on the other side. Notice all the guests are on the other side of the railing, right? So that's extremely important for the dolphins. The dolphins can differentiate between the guests and the trainers, especially when the guests are all on the other side of that railing. So as long as you're staying in front of those safety railings, you won't be confused by the dolphins as a trainer. Okay? If you're inside the railing for any reason, of course, with permission, just be careful not to initiate any behaviors. Don't do any SDs, don't do anything that might be confusing to the dolphins. Okay, so let's talk now about the actual things we have to avoid at all costs while we're here. Let's try to avoid it. That's very cute. Look at someone's down there shaking hands with Winter. But for us, no touching, feeding, or handling any of the animals, okay? Obviously without prior approval. Okay, so just don't feed them, don't touch them, don't handle them, don't try to do any of that without approval. This is important. You know, they're wild animals. It's important for your safety as well as their safety. Pretty sure that's John there posing. Very cool. He's behind that public railing. He's allowed to be, right? But we don't want to go inside the public railings for any reasons to avoid injury or compromise the animal's care at all. Okay, so we don't go behind the public railings. So that's another guideline for us. If you are allowed, if you do have permission, then you do have to remove all your jewelry and all the contents of your pockets. Okay, so you can't have. We don't want to risk anything falling into the water. There's Abby doing a hand signal to Winter. Looks like she's waiting there patiently. We do not want to do any SDs, any hand signals at all. It could be confusing to the dolphin. Just think about it. If we start doing those hand signals, that and then we don't have the ability to reward the animal, then maybe, for example, the next time the trainer asks them to do it, they don't do it because they didn't get a fish last time. Maybe they won't get one this time. So it's just important not to impede that training process in any way. So there's Sawyer with his hand on the glass. And we can put our hands up on the glass, but we don't when we're at the viewing windows. We don't want to tap, and we don't want to bang on the windows, obviously. Do anything. I know it's tempting to try to get the animal's attention, make a little bit of noise, but it could cause undue stress on the animals. So no tapping or banging on any of the viewing windows, not just the dolphin ones, but don't do it down where Bailey is. Don't do it on the pelican windows or even on the fish where the sharks are. No banging. No tapping on the windows. Alright, bright light warning. This one's real important too. If you happen to be in the building early or you happen to be in the buildings late and the lights are off around the habitats, let's leave them off. Okay? Don't turn on the lights, and if you're trying to get a view of the animals in the dark, don't shine a flashlight in there. The lights are off for a reason. They're resting. This would be like somebody going into your bedroom in the middle of the night, shining a flashlight in your face. You don't like it. The animals don't like it either. Alright, so we need to go over a few other basic safety rules. Any of the following activities might frighten or endanger the animals. It could be unsafe for everybody. Okay? And if you do see somebody else, like a guest or even another employee doing this stuff, just ask them politely to stop. If you're concerned or you're not sure, you can always find an appropriate staff member, somebody from animal care, and ask them to help you. Alright, let's go over a few other basic rules here for safety. Gate or railing climbing or sitting. Just don't do that. Don't sit on the railings. Don't climb the railings. Don't let anybody else, if you see anybody else on them, ask them to get down. You could fall in. Could cause injury to yourself. Could cause injury to the animals. We talked about animal feeding. Don't do it without permission. Animal teasing. I know it sounds silly. We don't mean making fun of the animals. What we really mean are things like loud noises, banging, tapping, anything outrageous to get the animal's attention could cause them stress. So no teasing. Proper sanitation. If you have permission to go inside the railing, I mentioned before, but you do have to use hand sanitizer, wash your hands, obviously remove all your items that could fall in there, but you do want to use proper sanitation, be clean before and after. Food and drinks are not allowed above the first level. Okay, so the only exception to that is if you're quickly bringing something into an office, you can do that, but other than that, no food, no beverages of any kind, even a closed water bottle are allowed on the second level. Two of them came up at the same time there, but let's talk about foreign objects first. Anything that falls into the pools, we want to make sure that we get it out quickly. So if you see something inside one of the habitats that doesn't belong there, please notify somebody in animal care. They'll get it out. You don't want to go ahead and grab it yourself. There are rules regarding using the appropriate equipment to get it out. Certain nets, for example, are only approved in certain areas. So you don't want to use an otter net in the turtle habitat, for example. So just let animal care take care of that, but notify somebody immediately if you notice foreign object in the pool. Outside animals are not allowed in the aquarium, with the exception of service animals like guide dogs, etc., approved by guest services. So no outside animals at all. Music players. That sounds silly, but you don't want to run around the aquarium with a boombox. So no music players are allowed unless they're personal players with the headphones. No skating or riding skateboards. Alcoholic beverages are actually not permitted inside the aquarium, with the exception of approved parties after hours, that kind of thing. No smoking. No smoking is allowed anywhere inside the building, even out on the harbor deck. So if you see somebody smoking, you'll have to ask them to go downstairs and outside, put out the cigarette immediately. And avoid running. You know, I know you might be in a hurry to get from one place to another, but it is an aquarium, and there's water on the ground, so it could be dangerous. No running. All right, some notes about specific animals. They all have a tale to tell. We talk generally about all the animals, but let's talk about some of the specific ones. Otters. Now, if it's a presentation is going on and the otters are down there with a trainer, just try to avoid some loud noises or any sudden movements that could frighten the otters and make them become aggressive toward the trainer, so avoid that. Now, the otters have an off exhibit area downstairs, and if you're asked to go inside that area, just don't put your fingers or hands through any of the mesh or the feeding holes. You might get bitten, so we want to avoid that. Now, there's a holding box in the hallway downstairs too, and if there is an otter in that box, don't approach the box. You can look, but don't make any hand gestures, any verbal commands, anything like that. You can just look at the otter, but don't get real close and startle it. Alright, specifically about dolphins, treatments, if they're receiving a treatment, they're working on some kind of medical behavior, remember what that's called? Husbandry, right? If they're in the water, even if they're out of the water, just be quiet. You don't want to disturb the animal, cause them to pull out of whatever position the trainer has them in. Pelicans. Ricky and Lucy. Our pelicans can spook very easily, so you just want to be careful. Obviously, don't enter the exhibit, and you want to avoid any sudden movements or tapping. Avoid banging on the glass. We mentioned that before. We don't want to spook them. Alright, let's talk a little about sea turtles. Now, they're not aggressive animals by nature, but they can become potentially dangerous if they get startled or they feel threatened, or if they mistake your fingers for fish. So don't reach into the habitats, obviously. Now, we have the turtle area where they're undergoing rehabilitation, and if they're in those tubs in the back, that means that they're probably going to be released into the wild. So because of that, we want you to stay at least 5 feet away from those tubs. Don't peek your head over the pool or make an effort to have the turtle come to the surface. Like I said, we're planning on releasing them. We don't want them to become used to people. That could be dangerous for them. Now, if the turtles are out of those tubs, and sometimes we take them out in order to give them various medical treatments, we want you to stay 10 feet away from those turtles. Okay, they're already stressed, and so other than the medical personnel that are actually performing the treatment, everybody else needs to stay at least 10 feet away from any turtle who's out of its habitat receiving any treatment at all. Bottom line is this: anytime you want to interact with the animals, the best rule of thumb is ask a trainer first. So, that concludes the training, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. If you want more information, there is that policy document I mentioned before. It's available on the G Drive. So if you want to download that, you can. If you don't have access to the G Drive, your supervisor can always print it out for you. I also mentioned that there's a quiz and an acknowledgement sheet. So if you go back to the website, download the document, print it out, and then you can fill out that quiz, answer the questions based on this information that you just received, and then also sign the acknowledgement form. You're going to fill out and return both the quiz and the acknowledgement form, and like I said, that goes to Dawn DeSantis's office right outside her door. You can just stick it in that basket. That's on the second floor in the new building.